Welcome to another episode of High Impact Garage. This is a cautionary tale to anyone and everyone taking their car to another shop. The vehicle in question is a 2008 Ford F-350, and it presents itself as an F-350, believe it or not. It's four-wheel drive. It's got a service body on the back. And it also has the 3-valve Ford Triton 5.4 liter engine. The customer concern was that it was running rough, didn't make any power, couldn't get it over 45 miles an hour, and they had just brought it out of a shop that had reportedly changed the fuel pump. In addition to changing the fuel pump, they changed the spark plugs, the ignition coils, the purge valve, and the vapor canister. So I'm okay with all of that if that was all needed to be done. But when it got in here, we started doing some initial testing, and I did a power balance test and found that it was on cylinder number 7, that it was misfiring, and went ahead and investigated at the spark plug on cylinder number 7. And what I found on cylinder 7 was this. I found a bolt had fallen into the spark plug well where number 7 cylinder is. And it looked like there was some carbon tracking down the side of the spark plug towards the nut. And sure enough, pull that nut out and drive the vehicle, and it no longer misfires. The trouble is that the trouble we discovered was that despite the fact it was no longer missing and that it was running nice and smoothly at that point, the spark plugs that had supposedly been changed less than 200 miles ago were not. They hadn't been changed at all. So we're like, okay, fine. So we went ahead and got the customer on the horn and started going down the list of everything, and this is what we found. We found, first of all, the spark plugs were not changed. So there's a picture of that. Those spark plugs don't look new at all. And then the purge valve supposedly got changed. Well, there's a picture of that. Purge valve that's obviously been on the truck since day one, since 2008. And then we went back and we were like, let's check the vapor canister, you know. And here's a picture of that. The vapor canister, that's that part right there. I mean, it's covered in dirt from Utah, from where it was. That didn't get changed 200 miles ago. So what I'm trying to say is whoever did this work, and I'm not going to name names, but whoever did this work did not do what they were contracted to do. And because they did not do what they were contracted to do, they in turn cost my customer a tremendous amount of money, because my customer paid for all that and then had to pay me to replace spark plugs. So we did replace the spark plugs. I replaced one of the coil boots because I was afraid that on that one cylinder where it had that carbon tracking, I didn't want to take a risk of it misfiring again. So new plugs, new coil boots, that helped out a lot. And then, of course, after that, we drove it and found that there was an evaporative emissions leak. Now, we tested with our test equipment. We'll show you a picture of that. We tested with our or with our smoke machine and did a flow test on all of the emissions devices that are pertinent to the evap system, and they're fine. They actually have integrity, which is not common. Usually you either have a bad vent solenoid or something like that comes up. But no, they had good integrity. So we went ahead from there and found that there was underneath the hood, there was a little piece that was having a problem underneath the hood. Basically what it comes down to is that under the hood, the vapor canister line running to the purge valve was loose. So we put a clamp on it. That solved the problem. So just in case you guys think I'm BSing you that this is supposedly done, replace fuel pump, $400. Replace vapor canister. They were charged $545 to replace the vapor canister. That's labor that they didn't do. Purge vent valve. They were charged $284 to change the purge valve. The spark plugs, they were charged $200 to replace the spark plugs. Ignition coils, they were charged $300 to change the ignition coils. And then here's the parts. Fuel pump, $371 for a fuel pump, which they do have. I'll give them that. Vapor canister, fuel filter. So that's interesting. The fuel filter is listed as vapor canister. That's a $245, which ironically there is a new fuel filter on there, but I would never pay $245 for a fuel filter. Purge vent valve, they were charged for 2 of those, and each of those is like $182. Spark plugs, $90 for spark plugs, which is kind of crazy because, I mean, that's reasonably priced. And then ignition coils, they were charged $269 for that. So, yeah, they were charged $3,000, and all they got was a fuel pump and a fuel filter and ignition coils, because the coils did get replaced. All right, so now that we have that sucker done, put back together again, what did we learn here? Well, the reality is this is not a common thing. These vehicles where people in shops don't do the work that they've been contracted to do, not very common. It actually happens very infrequently. When it does happen, it's important to call it out, because those techs, they get fired and they move on to other jobs and other shops. So time to learn a lesson is what that amounts out to. But most of the time, your techs are doing the right job. Maybe their workmanship's not that great because they didn't know, or they weren't well educated, or any number of things. But key is, this doesn't often happen, but it does bring up the important role of playing. It does bring up the important role of. It does play into how we have accountability. So when a shop does work for you, you know, ask for the old parts. There's no harm in asking them for the old parts. If they have an invoice that has part numbers on it, check the part numbers. Do due diligence. Get a second estimate. If an estimate seems a little ridiculous, get a second estimate. Those are all things to do. The other thing is to remember, just because it's expensive to fix cars does not mean that your car has to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to repair. Sometimes sometimes it is expensive, but sometimes it may not necessarily need to be that expensive. So anyway, hope you guys learned something from this video, or at least maybe have a new heightened fear. And we'll catch you all in the next one.